Welcome, everyone, to our Friday episode of Create a World. We are so happy to have you with us today. December, such an interesting month for so many of us.
It's a
And
good
and
way to put it.
yeah, and some of that's going to come up in our conversation today. So, if you are joining us for the first time on Create a World, I just want to take a minute or so to tell you a little bit about it. I should say I'm Janice Cornetti. I'm one of the collaborators for Create a World, and my guest, my buddy with me today is Electra Porzel, who's also one of the collaborators as well as the person who runs the Language of Consciousness Institute. So, we started Create a World because we were feeling the need to have conversation about everything that was moving. And lots of signposts pointing to the fact that things are going to get more interesting. There's that word again, for the next 2 years, especially. And that we're standing at a pretty significant moment in human evolution. And we wanted to be able to talk about that, but we wanted to be able to talk about it not in a teaching way, but in a way of each of us sharing our own stories and our own experiences about everything that's on the move for us. And we do this inside of the field of Tantra Mat, which is we are a cultural collective or community that's committed to the new futures that are rising on behalf of all life. And we're committed to existing in unity with creation, really returning to our role as co-creators. And we have some principles that set our field. And they are that everything operates on behalf of everything else, and everything is part of everything else. Everything's in relationship to everything else. And everything has a place. I think that one in particular is going to be a little more challenging for us the next few years, but everything has a place because everything is operating on behalf of life and having us exist as whole, and everything's always moving to the next greater whole. So it's in those principles that we have these conversations. And we're really here to be curious, and we invite you to be curious with us and to engage in the conversation with us. You can post on the YouTube if you're watching us live. If you happen to watch this recording later on and you still want to be in the conversation, you can go onto the CreateAWorld Facebook page and dialogue with us there. So thank you for being here with us this morning, and let's go. Electra, over to you.
Yeah, Janice and I were talking about what it is that we wanted to focus on. And one of the things that came up for both of us is the idea about how do we know what is our next step in our spiritual search. And one of the things we agreed on was that it was our internal sentience, which was the best director or directing us to our next step. What is internal sentience? Sentience is what my short term for sentient intelligence. And it can be sensation, sensitivity, imagination, energies running through you, um, your solar plexus firing. And it's the paying attention to that. Because one of the things that we know is that everybody has sentient intelligence. You've had this, your stomach all curled up because you're anxious about something. You may have paid attention to, oh, I ought to look over there, or I ought to look at that. And that's your sentient intelligence directing you. Sentient intelligence is a 24/7 system in your body that is paying attention not only to what's going on within your body, but also what is happening outside. When I was younger, I would sometimes we'd get brochures then, we didn't have the internet. And a brochure, many would come over my desk, right? Once they know you're interested, it's the same thing on social media. And all of a sudden, I would get an internal shake. I guess I could call it that. And and I grew to know that that was, this class is for you. You should go to this one. And we each have our own registers. You have registers for what's significant for you. You have registers for what's um, life defeating for you. And what we have found over time is that we can develop our acuity in listening to our sentience. And it can direct us to who to talk to, what to listen to, what to give our time to. And so that's kind of your first level of, I need to pay attention to more than my regular human life. Most of us are involved, or when in our 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, we're very much involved in the world. We are called to raise children, have a job, make money in the world. And so we have a lot of markers there for what society says is what we should be doing next. Now, when it comes to your spiritual markers, the ones that tell you, oh, you need to pay attention to this over here. Sometimes, for me, it felt that they kind of whacked me on top of the head and they got tired of giving me, they being either my sentience or my spiritual guides. And they got tired of waiting for me because I would go like, well, maybe next time I'll try this. Maybe next time. And it was like, no, you need to do this now. So I stepped into the spiritual field thinking, oh, I can always go back to the way it was. Well, the truth is no. Nor would I want to go back, because I discovered that there's more to life. Life is not just our present day humanity, raising kids, having jobs, being in relationships, handling money. It's about our deeper connections to nature, deeper connections to spirit, deeper connections to creation. And everybody who's in the field of Tantra has answered her own or his own internal sentience. They came across us and went, oh, this one may have something for me. You don't know what it is. I couldn't do an intellectual understanding and saying, well, this has this and this and this, and those are critical to my spiritual growth. It depends. And that, I think, is the hardest thing for people, is that what your friend may find to be her spiritual anchor point may not be yours. I had a sister-in-law who we were very much in sync about personal searching. And we talk about it, and we even went to one of Brooke Medics and Eagle's retreats. And then her path went this way, and my path went this way. We were both deepening our relationship with our own spirit and with creation, but we found a different path to that. And I think you have to pay attention to that. The most important thing is that you start paying attention to that inner niggle, is what I'll call it. That'll be my shorthand for it, right, Janice? We all want a better world. We want a better life for those we love. And sometimes that means not following the path that the family or the everyday world says that this is how you should find your spirituality. So it takes a little bit of a no, I have to do this. I don't know why it's important for me, but I have to do this. And your path is not always direct either. You may, like I did with my sister-in-law, we both had a fascination with and an interest in and felt fed by the Native American traditions. So we ended up going to this retreat with Brook Medicine Eagle. But then it's a foundation. Like I from Brook Medicine Eagle, I learned about Qigong. So I really got into learning about Qigong, practicing Qigong. And from Qigong, I don't know how the path ended up, but it ended up with Tantra Mat. And the one thing I knew when I listened to her, and I read her book on the Irish tale of a modern mystic, was I wanted, this woman has something I want. I don't know what it is, but she has an access point that I want access to. And you're going to make those decisions for yourself when you come to a point to say, I don't know why this is my path, but it is. And it is my path for now, is what you'll say. I think Janice and I agreed that it's the internal sentience that is your most reliable marker for you. The other thing I would say is that there is being in the field with others. That we were taught when we were young that, you have to pull up your own bootstraps and do it by yourself. And you don't have to. In fact, in spiritual growth, you're better off with a group of people that are in sync with you, or you in sync with them, however you want to put it, that are paying attention to what you're finding critical to pay attention to. And in a field like that, and I know you don't realize it when you're not in a field, but the field, it is actually an energetic mechanism that has your back, that supports you. And so you're not out there on your own. I was the only person in my entire Catholic family to head this direction. And if I relied on them and the direction they were taking, I wouldn't have answered my own need. The other thing is make sure it's life enhancing. If you are ever with a group of people or even on an individual search and something in your inner gut says, watch out, pay attention. And that's how you follow your path to your own spiritual. At least that's how I would do it. That's how I did it. Janice, how much was that similar to what you went through?
And I think it's important in our conversation this morning to make a distinction between spirituality and religion. And if you are a regular participating member of the field of Tantra Mat, you've heard that distinction drawn many times. But if you're newer to us, I just want to reiterate that we do draw a significant distinction there.
Regular participating member of the field of Tantra Mat.
Sorry.
That
Religion is religion is a man-made system with rules and dogma, and multiple different religions have been established in our world. There is a lot roiling between some of those religions right now that is, I believe, working something out to move to a next greater whole. But in the meantime, there's a whole lot of what goes against life that's being produced by those religions. Whereas spirituality is really, what Tantra's been Electra's been talking about this morning, with this notion of your sentience and your connection with creation and who you are and what you know to be true for you. And I say all that because I just want to share a little bit of my own story. So I was also raised in a Christian church. But I was raised Presbyterian and Northern Presbyterian, and they're pretty, I say that because they're a pretty intellectual crowd. And when I went to college, I still thought of myself as a Christian, and I went to the church that they had on campus, the chapel, for services every Sunday, and did that through much of my college experience. Although I started to have things happen that made me sort of question my own placement in all of that, and one of those was meeting another student in the theater group that I was part of, and she was Jewish, and she was very devout, and just a wonderful person. And I started to say to myself, like, if I have so much respect for her, and she is so devout in her religion, and she has respect for me, and I'm devout in my religion, and yet they're different religions, it can't be that one's right and one's wrong. Like, that did not make sense to me. And so it must mean that that every facet of religion holds kernels of truth for us to mine. And then when I graduated from college and I moved back home for a little while, I found myself through a series of events directing the children's choir for the regular director who was out on maternity leave. And through that experience, I had some direct contact with the pastor, which I hadn't previously because I'd, mostly been away at college. And the interactions were not good. They were not life enhancing. And in particular, it turned out that he was actually trying to use me to drive the original person out of her position because he didn't like the way that she was directing the choir. And so one Sunday morning there I am directing the kids, and she shows up thinking she's directing the kids, and we're like looking at each other like, and so yeah, so I found out that I was being used by him as a pawn. And then not too long after that, it turned out that he was married and having an affair with a married organist. So like just humans humaning all over the place, right? And so again, it was this moment for me of realizing that religion wasn't some pure thing, some immutable set of laws. Religion was a bunch of people actually kind of telling each other what to do, in my experience. And it didn't do anything to help me feel closer to creation. Even as a kid, for me, while there were a lot of aspects of church that I enjoyed, there were also a lot of aspects that I didn't enjoy. And I always found that when I needed to, talk to God, if you will, I went outside and sat on a log or a rock or somewhere, and I definitely experienced connection to the great I am in nature more than anywhere else, but also through performing. And so all of this led to, what they call a crisis of faith for me. And I decided, yeah, I'm done. I'm done with Christianity. And I left. But there was a hole there that had yet to be filled. And it was actually two things happened. One, through another series of events, I ended up at a retreat where the person leading the retreat was talking a little bit about her sort of journey with Christianity. And she said, where I am now is like, I'm a big fan of Jesus. That's how I think of myself. And I'm like, okay. I can get that. And then a couple of years down the road, I actually started studying feng shui. And it was sort of peering into that and then into some of the Eastern religions in my exploration that again brought me back to this idea that religions are just humans humaning with little pieces of truth here and there, and that you could actually draw truth from all of these different places, and that what I had to do was build my own understanding of what did it mean to me to feel connected to creation? What did it mean to me to feel and to move with the greater system of which I'm a part? And that was also for me the beginning of realizing that sometimes my body knew things that my brain didn't know, or that the frontal lobe didn't know. Because I would get these niggles, right? I would get this niggle when talking to this pastor, and I'm like, something does not feel right here. And yet, like, I would get the niggle that, oh, this really, like when I started studying feng shui and reading, I was like, that's really interesting. That's really interesting, right? So I got the niggle that was like, oh, this might be something that you want to check out. And again, that my path is very different than I have a brother, and our paths are very different. But it doesn't make either path less valid or less real. And if you were raised in the United States or other industrialized cultures, there is definitely a way in which it's about rules, right? And for you to be a good citizen, you have to follow those rules. And many of the rules that we've been raised with are about things like, well, I should find somebody I admire and do what they do, or I should do what my parents tell me, or I should do what my boss tells me, or I should. And it's not that it means that you can always just say, screw that, but it's on you to do the inner exploration of, does this feel real for me? Is this life enhancing for me? I don't have children. That means I'm breaking a big rule in American society. But it wasn't something that I wanted more than other things that I wanted. And so I don't have children. But I'm contributing to the next generation in other ways. I'm not a member of an organized religion, and in some community, I'm in the South, and in the South, I'm breaking a rule. I'm supposed to go to church on Sunday and Wednesday nights, but it's not life enhancing for me. And so I choose a different path. And it can be unnerving and it can be scary to say, I'm gonna take this fork in the road while everybody else is taking that fork. But I learned many years ago that I had no peace unless I followed my own inner knowing. Back to you, Electra.
Inner peace is a real critical factor in making your decisions. And we all know what it's like to be pulled apart. You know, like this is what everyone wants me to do, but there's something I need to do. And sometimes on one side, we go with what the family wants or our culture says, because that's felt to be the best thing or the most appropriate or the least disruptive to the routine of the family. I still remember I had long ago stopped going to the Catholic Church, and I joined the Unitarian Universalist Church because they were the nearest thing I could find to what I wanted. But they were very intellectual as well. But anyway, I tell my mom that I have, joined the Unitarian Church. She goes, "Oh, that's nice." And then the next week, she starts asking me questions about, am I getting married in that church? She thought I was a uni, the Korean church. And I can't remember but I said, "No, Mom, I'm a Unitarian Universalist." And she's like, "Oh, God, help us." Yes, she could deal with that now. So it actually turned out to be good that she made the mistake, because then being a Unitarian was okay, really okay, because I wasn't about to marry some Korean that I didn't know. And it's a day by day path, because each of us has taken a path that may have us look like we're the same as everybody else going to church on Sunday, that kind of thing. But we may have a very different personal spiritual path. One of the things I did in the Unitarian church was, it is a very intellectual church. They're very socially motivated, and they're very intellectual. So I started a women's earth-based ceremonies group. And it was the first time that conversation entered into that congregation. So in the beginning, we did it all by ourselves, not getting into church at all. Then we were able to do one on the major hinges of the earth of the year. We actually did Sunday services. And it was interesting to watch the ministers adjust to it. And to me, okay, this is my viewpoint, is it rounded out the spiritual viewpoint of the church, because we were not only having these intellectual discussions, but we were saying there's a larger field that we belong to, and it impacts us, and we take note of it. And that's a gift back. I always thought it was our gift back to the church, so that they could see the larger field within which their intellectual discussions rise. I think that group is still going at that church. So it took, I guess, the bravery of the women that were involved in the earth-based ceremonies group to bring, I remember the very first one we did was a winter solstice ceremony. And it talked about spirit, it talked about the energies of nature, and it talked about other religious traditions, trying to round out what people knew to be true for them for the holiday at that time of year. And this is part of my own gig, which is I always feel like I want to give back. I want to open up, give opportunities to others to open up to the more of what life is. Because life isn't just the physical one. Okay, this is my viewpoint. That we exist with every day. There's so much more here. And when we open up to the ethers, to the relationships with nature, to the relationships with creation, God, Goddess, with relationships with our own spiritual team, it's like the world widens and it gets more secure for me. I know that whatever I'm experiencing is true and valid. And I know that if for some reason I'm off track, I will get sentient information that, yeah, this is what you want to do, or sentient information is, no, that's not really a good idea. I used to I was a massage therapist for a while, and I really liked the idea of massaging pregnant ladies and infants. And so I was like, and I was checked in with my guidance, and I said, is this something I should be doing? And they said, no, you're not going to practice it. But I really wanted to do it. So I went and took the class on massaging pregnant ladies, and it was really cool. There's nothing more cool than holding the belly of a pregnant lady and breathing with her and breathing with the baby. And so there wasn't that the experience wasn't good for me, but I never ended up practicing it. I may have had under a dozen clients, but I never changed my practice to reflect that. So when it came along time to take the class with infants, which I thought would be extremely cool, I again checked in and they said, you can do it, but you're really not going to use it. And I thought they were right. They were right the first time. So I didn't take that class. I still think it'd be cool to do it. But every time it's additional information. It isn't just what you've always wanted to do. In fact, it's something new. Like I'll have to say, when I came into this field, all I knew about Tantra was the book, The Irish Tale of a Modern Mystic. And I couldn't put language to what she had, other than I knew I wanted access to that. And I am 10 years in now, I think. Yeah, 10 years into following her. And I don't think it's a following her, because she's like a resource. And she brings in new information that I get to go, is this practice or is this path right for me? Because you're always checking with yourself. You can't ask a tantra or a guru somewhere or a teacher what's right for me, because they don't know. They only know what's right for them. They may have tools or practices that you really like, or that you like but you're not attracted to. That means that you're supposed to be looking and searching to see what those other what might come up in your field, whether it's a YouTube or whether it's a book or an article that goes, this is where I'm supposed to be going. We are, as Janice mentioned, we're at a very critical time. So I think energetically, there's a lot of higher dimensional energies coming into this planet. And it's disrupting a lot of stuff that we're all experiencing. And, I use tools from the templates and the language of creation. I use other practices that Tantra uses to help me handle this sometimes disruptive energetic field. And I think everybody needs to be aware that this is a more intense time. It isn't one where we can sit back and go, well, I'll think about that, when I'm retired, or I'll think about that at some other thing. You really need to pay attention to it now. You need to pay attention to the inner niggles. You need to watch and look at what is coming across, your social media feed. Some of it you can totally discard because there's a lot of stuff coming across your social media, but it's when you're reading it and something, that inner niggle, whether it's in your solar plexus or your belly, or it's somewhere in your body, and that's the signal that you need to pay attention to this particular piece of information. And it may be nothing more than you need to be present to that eclipse. You need to be paying attention to this kind of thing. So it isn't like the niggle has decided the whole thing for you. It's just a signaling system. That's all it is. And you're the one who has to see, does this practice, does this lead me where I'm supposed to go and where you're supposed to go? The only markers that Janice and I have for you is that it needs to be life enhancing. And I would always say it has to be one with another in the field. You have to be with others who are in similar searches because it creates an energetic field of support for you. And, you know, we have groups of people who have been together writing the templates for almost 2 years now. And I'm amazed at the depth of sharing and the depth of vulnerability that the members of that group can do. And it's only because they followed what was theirs to do, and it was to be part of that group and continue the practice of writing the templates. I know it sounds almost like we're hitting you over the head with this, but if you're not sure about what your own sentient registers are, pay attention to what's life enhancing for you and note what's life defeating for you, and just keep steering towards what's life enhancing for you. And that doesn't mean that might not mean giving up some things. Like in my case, well, I'd already given up going to church in the Catholic Church, but it meant holding different viewpoints of what spirituality is, of what is running the world from my family. So I always know that if I decided to please them, I would never have pleased myself. So I don't know what else to advise to give you.
I'm gonna ask you in a minute, Electra, to talk a little bit more about the templates, because we may have people that listen to this call that don't know what they are. But I just wanted to take a minute and draw us to this idea of life enhancing versus life defeating. And I think it's worth your exploration to look at how you arrive at whether something is life enhancing or life defeating for you by examining your emotional plane, and also your body and your physicality. It's not just mental, it's not just language. In fact, I would argue you're going to get much more valid information from the emotional plane or from the physical plane. You know, when we talk about that niggle, that's something that we feel. It's often something that creates an emotional response, a yay or an ooh. And again, you know, for those of us in Western cultures, we've been taught that you know, the sort of what happens in that frontal lobe, that is king, or queen, and that how we feel, you know, what emotions we experience, physical sensations, that those are something to be ignored often. I mean, we're often trained to just ignore them. And part of getting in touch with your sentience is giving those vital aspects of the human experience back the power and the recognition that they deserve. You know, so many times in my life when I've had to make a decision, I find myself often split between what my brain is telling me and what my gut is telling me. Or something sounds really good on paper, and yet when I step into it with my body, I feel tired. And it's like, oh, well, if something makes me feel tired, then that is probably an indication that it's not going to end up being very life enhancing for me. I mean, that's sort of fatigue, right? I mean, I've done things that I'm very excited about and I give it my all and I feel tired, like, oh, I need a nap after that. But I'm talking about this sensation of being drained, And so it's just going to be really, really critical, especially in these coming years, that we are able to get in touch with the wisdom of our whole system, not just what we've been trained by default to think, but what our spirit, our soul is saying is really true for us, for me. And that's, a lot of people are saying that we live in a post-truth world, and we see lots of evidence of that. And so to me, there's a difference between the truth, capital T, capital T, and what's true for me. And this idea of sentience is getting in touch with what's true for me, because that may not be true for somebody else. But if it's true for you, it's true for you. And that is the anchor point that we're going to need to be able to hold on to in these coming years. So back to you, Electra.
It's really nice what people are talking about in the chat. Another word for life enhancing is resonant, is coherent. And those kind of are checkoff points to say, is this path resonant with where I want to go? It's just like Jenna said, there could be something you think, yeah, that's really cool, or like me for wanting to take care of pregnant ladies and their babies. But it wasn't in line with my spiritual journey. It would be wonderful to do it, but they were right. They don't, I mean, that's the message system I get. Sometimes I get words, sometimes I get energies, and everybody has their own system. But it's really important to start paying attention with the information that you're getting from an internal source, because that will be guiding you for you, what is the next step in your spiritual journey. One of the things that I was raised in the Catholic Church, it was all about getting your sins forgiven and doing the right things and getting the credits up there so you could get through. And one of the things that I learned in this work is and the other spiritual work I've done is that there is actually only one human soul. So all of the work we do on our individual part feeds the whole human soul being able to move to the next greater whole. And sometimes we don't have access to our resonant language about that. One of the ways that you can get access to that is through writing the templates of the language of creation. Tantra was given them in the beginning of this century. And she always says they were made for this time so that people could crave the world, the life that they wanted. And in the templates, just so you know, there's a difference between, yeah, this is what I want, and saying whatever you say in your prayers, to actually designing something within your mental mind and your body that moves you along the path to that thing that you crave. And in the templates, there's what we call recursions. There's 3 paragraphs. And in them, you only write life-enhancing phrases about the thing that you crave. Well, that makes it very different if you're saying, what you'd like to say is, I wish this person was out of my life because I hate them. You can't do that, right? But you could write our template 3 about what Jane Doe is for me is. But Jane, you can't have all Jane's irritating things in there. So you end up with 12 phrases or life enhancing about Jane Doe. I did this about a gal, actually, who was a little bit of my nemesis where I live. And what I discovered is by writing that template, I started seeing her as a full human being. You know, as a mother, as a grandmother, as a dog lover, as a gardener, and all the things that I knew about her. And then what happened afterwards, after I wrote that, is I never got that when I saw her, because she would go at me and I go at her. And so it was like not working. And that's all that happened from writing that one recursion. And my intention that my actually awareness that she was more than the irritation she was having between me. And it made it easier. And in the end, there were several times where she hugged me and she recognized what good was out of the relationship as well as I did. We never became buddies, but that wasn't the purpose of it. For me to write that template relieved me of the emotional ick that was really interfering with how I function. And I didn't realize how much it interfered till I wrote that template. In the templates, the first one is one about craving. So maybe you're craving good health or money or a better apartment, and you write 12 phrases on it. Well, when you write those 12 phrases, they get embedded in the neural networks of your brain. And so every time you think apartment, those 12 phrases light up. So when you're looking for apartment, you start looking for what matches the 12 phrases. On the second one, it's craving being, which is a state of being. So I'm always fascinated that they jump right into states of being, because those are kind of nebulous a lot of times. But by languaging it, you start giving this brain, which is overloaded with historic ideas of what is, your own ideas of what is to be a state of being. Then template 3 is like what I did about my friend, that you're craving what something is. So you redefine the what. Craving, the next one, template 4, is on craving what being. So craving what being silent, craving what being charitable, craving what being sentient, craving what being resonant, craving what being reverent, which is the latest one I'm really interested in doing. All of a sudden, it has a lot more to it. It has 12 phrases that you have said are right for you about that particular subject. All those first 4 are fantastic. You can live with them, but there are deeper ones. One is the template 5, which is craving the meta point of 3 different things. Template 6, which is embodying something. And then the template 7 is an embodying one. Template 7, I have to do a different 6. But in any case, what you want, you have, okay, template 6 is one with creation. So you are doing an embracing the divinity in my life would be a phrase you might want to do. But then again, you do 12 phrases around that, and they're all life-enhancing phrases. When I talked about the group of people that stayed together for 2 years to write the templates, they started with writing one phrase on each of the templates. Then the next time they wrote a template and they unpacked it. And they've continued that, running the templates and unpacking them for 2 years now. And I would say that group, and there are about 10 of them, have been critical to the cohesiveness of the field of Tantramat, because they share at a very deep level. They share honestly, and they keep up with the work because each of us, it's our responsibility. We can introduce you to any practice you want. That anybody can introduce you to a spiritual practice, but until you regularly do it or write it, it can't really do its work for you. And that's, I would suggest, go to the website for the Language of Consciousness Institute, www.languageofconsciousness.institute, and see what's there. See if you're attracted to any of the things that we're doing. And I would say, whatever path you choose, keep at it. Don't let it go. If you know, you go like, oh, this path requires meditation every day, and I have to get up early. Well, you can let that voice continue to talk to you about get up early, or you can say, what is it that my day gains by meditating every morning? And then you say, for the sake of that gain, I will wake up before I want to. I will go sit in that chair and I will meditate. And when we follow that, whatever that path is, whether it's meditation or the templates or other practices, your body, your nature, your spirit starts getting fed. We need to feed our spirit. This Western world is not one that cares a fig about your spirit being fed. So it's up, and that, when I was a kid, I went to the Catholic Church, and spirit got fed by going to church and listening to the Mass and breathing the incense. And that's still my idea about reverence. And that's why I want to write reverence now, so that I put in my brain all the things that I'm actually very reverent about. Nature, my relationships with nature, and relationships with other people, but give them, I don't know if there's a different thing about when I was in a church and I was reverent to a practice that everybody was doing. And that, because we were all doing it together, I think the experience was reverence. And now I want to expand that meaning in my brain and my emotions to include all this other stuff that I'm reverent for. So that's actually, I'm going to run the templates on that, because it's, to me, once I recognize what I'm reverent about, I recognize what is life enhancing or resonant for me, and then I will get up instead of going blah, 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 about getting up for meditation or to write the templates or whatever it is. And I will do it going, because I know this feeds me. This helps me make the bigger decisions of my life and the directions that I want to work, so that I create a better life for humanity. And that's what a lot of us are about. This work isn't done just so I'm going to shine like some star after I die. My work will be done when humanity has gone to it, turned to its next higher recursion. That's when my work will be done.
One of the folks watching with us this morning shared that that the templates help her see who she is. And that's part of this whole sentience conversation that we're having this morning. And for me, what I found in the work that I've done writing templates is that I can be surprised by what reveals itself as I'm writing. That a word actually means this, where I might have, if you'd asked me before the template, I would have said it means that. And I see it as a way of revealing, again, revealing that sentience that that sometimes gets crowded out by lifing. And And to me, it's an opportunity for creation to be having a conversation with me and to give me guidance. And the fact that it sort of reveals itself in the moment is very impactful for me. When something pops up that was like, oh, wow, okay. And then sometimes I'll see that the same thing pops up over and over and over again. And it's like, oh, well, I guess that is something to really pay attention to.
Yes.
But it's a way of, it's a way, to me, it's a way of freeing, my inner knowing.
That's actually a good phrase, freeing your inner knowing, because everybody talks about, there's 4 sections. One, you say craving, whatever it is you're craving, good health. But you say, what does that create? So it creates another state of you. And creating that state, what does that sustain and maintain over time? And sustaining and maintain embodies what? As we move through it, people start going, whoa, did I write that? That's like, really, that's deep. And we find out all this wisdom that is within us. And in our relationship with creation and our guides and our teams and our higher spirit, whatever you want to call it, that starts communicating with us while we write the templates. And by the time we end up with the last embodies phrase in the 4th recursion, we're like, usually gobsmacked. How did I do that? That is so clear about what I want in this. And so the idea of that first phrase is huge. And we start getting, and the anything is that it doesn't disappear. That aha. You move into the rest of your life with that larger knowing in your field. And that informs you on even more stuff. Somebody asked what the running the templates was and it was answered, but it simply means that you pick one phrase, like, a healthy body, healthy mind, and you do each template on that same phrase. Template 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the reason we do that way is because it really deepens our knowing. You can imagine if you write one creation exercises and your field gets this big, how much will that be expanded and deepened by writing it 7 different creation templates? So I invite you to look at the Institute and play with us in that. But most of all, listen to your own sentient knowing. Really pay attention to it. And I'll start honoring the directions that it's sending you. Janice?
Yeah, we're designed to create. And yet we create best when we are in touch with our sentience, with our inner knowing. And I would also say that remember that things like aching for something, longing for something, craving for something, like is it in that's part of it. And those are messages that we want to pay attention to as this spiral of human evolution turns.
Definitely.
And so join us next Friday, same time, same place. Thanks for being in conversation with us today.
Yes, thanks for listening and being involved.